Welcome to the Nutrition Science Podcast, where we help you cut through the noise and make informed, science-based decisions about nutrition and your health. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Nutrition Science Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Adrian Chavez, and today we are going to be discussing three popular topics. The first thing that we're going to talk about are peptides. I've been seeing a lot about peptides, getting a lot of questions about peptides. We'll discuss what peptides actually are and whether or not they're something that you should be paying attention to. The second thing that we're going to cover is apple cider vinegar and blood sugar control and weight loss. So I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Is it good for blood sugar control? Is it something that if you have a high HbA1c you should be using? And also, does it help with weight loss? So we'll discuss the actual research behind apple cider vinegar. And then the last thing that we're going to discuss is chia seeds and whether or not you should grind your chia seeds. So we'll talk about whether there's benefits to grinding them versus eating them whole, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around this particular topic as well that I've seen through various discussions. All right, so let's go ahead and start with talking about peptides. So what is a peptide? A peptide is just a string of amino acids, a short string of amino acids. So proteins are strings of amino acids that are 50 or more amino acids long. And peptides are strings of amino acids that are between 2 and 50 amino acids long. And what are amino acids? I've talked about this quite a bit more in the protein episode, so I'll link down the show notes and I recommend checking that out. But amino acids are essentially the building blocks for everything in our body. So the amino acids that come from protein. So when we eat a protein, our body breaks that protein down into amino acids. Our body absorbs those amino acids and it uses those amino acids to create new neurotransmitters, to build new tissue, to help build cholesterol proteins that help with signaling throughout the body. And they're very important for everything in our body. And these peptides are shorter strings of amino acids that have been shown to have various impacts on signaling mechanisms throughout our body. The most popular one that everyone's heard about are these GLP-1 medications, the weight loss medications. These are called glucagon-like peptide. This is a peptide that influences signaling in our stomach and in our brain and influences how fast we digest our food and our appetite. And these GLP-1s, they've been well studied and they work. And so I think a lot of the hype around peptides have come from the success of these GLP-1 medications. However, there's not any good evidence to support any positive health benefits of any other peptides, especially when taken orally, because peptides are strings of amino acids. And if you take it orally, meaning that you take a pill, your digestive system, the enzymes in your digestive system, are going to break down those peptides into individual amino acids, and they're not actually going to have the effect that you would hope for them to have inside of your body, because you actually need that peptide to be intact. So that's why GLP-1 medications are given intravenously, because you couldn't take that orally and absorb it and absorb an intact peptide that's going to have the same effect. And so if you're taking a peptide and you're seeing something being sold and it's sold as an oral medication and it's claiming that it has some type of peptide signaling effects for like tissue repair, that's the main thing that I'm seeing is like weight loss or tissue repair, like recovery from exercise, the claims that are being made around various peptides. That's definitely not going to have any benefit. You're being sold something that's not going to have the effect that it's claiming to have at all. And if you're being sold something that's being administered intravenously, meaning that you have to, use a needle and put it directly into your body, I highly recommend avoiding putting a needle into your body and buying something that is an unregulated product that is not well studied and doing that. Now, if you want to take that risk, you're more than welcome to, but the supplement market is the complete Wild West. And especially with any of these new fads, when these new fads come along, companies pop up everywhere and they can sell anything. They can just be selling you saline and having you inject that and selling you that for $150 a month, telling you that it's going to help with tissue repair. And maybe you think it does from a placebo side of things, but it's hard to really know. And I'm not saying that every company or every product is like that, but currently the market, I wouldn't mess with it myself. There's not good evidence to support that any of these peptides are going to have a major positive impact on recovery or health or weight loss or any other outcomes. besides the GLP-1 medications. Now, any peptide that is shown to have these benefits, pharmaceutical companies are going to jump all over that, like they did with the GLP-1s. That's the way our system works. So I would be highly cautious of all of these peptide products on the market. Like I said, this is the Wild West in terms of you're being sold things that they're not being tested. There's no data behind them. Some of these things may turn out to be beneficial to our health in some way, but that's just going to take time for research to occur, for products to be synthesized and created so that we know they're safe, so that we know they're effective, so that we know we're absorbing them properly. And that's just not there yet. And so when you're taking something like this, you're completely it's just rolling the dice. Now, if you want to trust someone and take it, that's your body. You can choose to do what you like, but I steer clear of all of these products currently because there's a lot of stuff that's being promoted for tissue repair, recovery, weight loss, and the evidence just isn't there, and these products are just not regulated whatsoever. So now let's talk about apple cider vinegar. This is another trend that got pretty popular over the last few years. Seems to have died down now, but still get a lot of questions about it. People are still curious about whether or not this is a useful thing to include into your overall dietary pattern, and there may be some circumstances where it is. So what apple cider vinegar does, the way that it can help with blood sugar regulation, is that it slows gastric emptying. So when you take apple cider vinegar along with the meal, you're gonna have that meal in your stomach for a little bit longer. And when you have a meal in your stomach for a little bit longer, it takes longer to be absorbed because the absorption of that, the calories and the carbohydrates and the all of the nutrients from that food occur in the small intestine. So you're not going to experience any increase in blood sugar from eating a food until that food actually gets into the small intestine and gets absorbed. And so you can delay that process or slow that process a little bit by slowing your digestion and slowing stomach emptying. So that's one of the mechanisms through which apple cider vinegar helps to reduce blood sugar control. The other one is acetic acid can interfere with some of the enzymes that break down carbohydrates. So when you have apple cider vinegar with a high carbohydrate meal, it will interfere with some of the enzymes that help break down some of those carbohydrates. This further slows the absorption of some of the carbohydrates in that meal. So let's say, for example, you eat a meal without vinegar and then you have another meal with apple cider vinegar or any other type of vinegar. It's acetic acid from the vinegar. So it doesn't have to be apple cider. It just can be any vinegar, but apple cider is the more common one that is used. If you have a meal with the vinegar, it's going to slow the rate at which your stomach empties into your small intestine. And so you're going to absorb the food a little bit more slowly. And then it's going to interfere with some of the enzymes that break down the carbohydrates. So you're going to take a little bit longer to absorb those carbohydrates. So for those two reasons, it can lower blood sugar responses to high carbohydrate meals by about 20-25% in some cases. So let's say you had a big meal of pasta with and without apple cider vinegar, probably going to be about a 20-25% lower increase in your blood sugar. So let's say your blood sugar went up to 200, it might go up to 160 instead, or 150, or even lower than that, depending on your underlying metabolism and how many carbohydrates you ate. Now, that can potentially be a good thing, but I've talked about this before. I'll link that episode in the show notes as well. We don't necessarily need to try to like reduce every glucose increase after our meal. So like when we eat pasta, for example, or when we eat bread, for example, our blood sugar goes up and it's supposed to go up. That's not a bad thing necessarily. Now, if it goes up and stays up and it does that to the point where we're developing prediabetes or having other issues, then that's a problem. But if it goes up, quite a bit after a meal and then comes right back down, that's not a big deal. So I talked about that more in another podcast episode. I'll link that in the show notes. But the goal isn't to minimize every glucose increase throughout our day. The goal is to make sure that we're eating a balanced diet and we're eating the right amount of carbohydrates and we're eating high quality sources and we're eating enough protein and fiber in meals and we're having balanced meals so that overall our blood sugar control and our health is in a good place. And so if you're doing all of those things, then you don't really have to, it's not a good idea to be taking apple cider vinegar with every meal. And there's negative effects to that as well, because it can have negative effects on your tooth enamel. It can irritate your esophagus. And it also, when I mentioned that it slows gastric emptying and interferes with the breakdown of carbohydrates, that can lead to the food sitting in your small intestine for a little bit longer. And for some people, that can lead to increased bloating and other digestive symptoms. And so there are some negatives to doing apple cider vinegar with your meals. And most people who are living a healthy and balanced lifestyle don't really need to reduce all of their blood sugar increases after meals. That's, if you are someone who has metabolic dysregulation, you have type 2 diabetes, it's not well controlled at all, your blood sugar skyrockets after meals, it doesn't come back down. In those cases, every little strategy that you can put into place to help to improve your blood sugar control is probably going to be really important. But for most people, the focus should be on eating a healthy dietary pattern, eating enough protein, fiber, not overeating refined carbohydrates, not overeating added sugars, making sure that you're living an active lifestyle, making sure that you're dropping excess body weight if you're carrying excess body weight. All of these things are going to help improve underlying metabolic health, and they're going to ensure that you're not experiencing these substantial increases in blood sugar after regular meals. Now, if you have a really big high carbohydrate meal every once in a while, your blood sugar is going to go up a lot, but that's not a big deal if that's not happening all of the time. So with apple cider vinegar, yes, if you take apple cider vinegar, like 2 tablespoons with a high carbohydrate meal, and highly recommend doing this with water, like not taking shots of it. But if you do that, that's going to reduce the blood sugar response to that meal. Now, does that mean that this is substantially beneficial to health and everyone needs to do it? Not at all. If you need additional strategies to reduce your blood sugar after a meal, can be helpful. But for most people, you don't really need to be doing this. Don't recommend taking apple cider vinegar before your meals. Again, can be helpful in specific cases of people who really have dysregulation with blood sugar and other lifestyle strategies aren't helping, but I highly recommend focusing on those other lifestyle strategies rather than interfering with your digestive processes by taking apple cider vinegar with every meal. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is chia seeds, and should you grind them? And the answer is yes. You should grind them if you're trying to get all of the omega-3s from the chia seeds. So there was a study that was published in, I think, 2016 that showed that when they were ground, we got a lot more of those omega-3 fatty acids than when we eat them whole. Now, there were still benefits for improved blood sugar control, reduced inflammation. Like, there's benefits to chia seeds if you're still eating them whole. It's not like they're completely not beneficial at all. However, if you're trying to maximize the absorption of the omega-3 fats from the chia seeds, which is one of the beneficial components of this food, then you do want to grind them. So very simple. You can buy them ground. Ground chia seeds, they sell them at the store. Same thing with flax seeds. If you're eating flax seeds, buy them ground as well. You'll absorb more of those omega-3 fats. I am a big fan of chia seeds and flax seeds. They're high in fiber. They're high in micronutrients. There are several studies that show that they're beneficial for improving blood sugar control, reducing LDL cholesterol, improving digestion. So I strongly recommend including them in your diet on a regular basis. And you can sprinkle them into yogurt. You can put them into smoothies. You can work them into baked goods. Like I made some pancakes this morning and I put some flax seeds in there. You can just sprinkle them onto almost anything, but I strongly recommend to include some of these into your diet on a regular basis. Chia and flax are my favorite because they give you the fiber, but they also give you the omega-3 fats. Now, it's not the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. It's not DHA and EPA. It is ALA, which is the precursor to those fatty acids. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I will link the omega-3 episode that I've published in the past. I'd recommend checking that out because it's important to understand that 3 different types of omega-3 fats, because we do want to make sure that we're getting the EPA and DHA, and we don't get that from plant food sources except for algae. And so I don't want to go into too much detail about that on this episode, but if you want to learn more about omega-3 fats and the importance of EPA and DHA and what ALA is and how that all works, check out the omega-3 fats episode that I will also link in the show notes. And anytime you want to learn more about a topic, you can go to the podcast website, thenutritionsciencepodcast.com, and there's a search bar there, and you can search for topics, and you can see if I published any episodes on that topic in the past. All right, so let's do a quick recap. Peptides. Peptides are just short chains of amino acids. They're not quite as long as a protein, and in our body, they can have signaling effects. However, the market around selling peptides, especially when taken orally, there's little to no evidence showing any benefits of any peptides. I'm sure there will be some evidence that builds up at some point, but I would not trust any products on the market at this current time. Next, apple cider vinegar can be helpful for reducing blood sugar after your meals. It does so by interfering with your digestion of the carbohydrates that you eat in that meal. And that's not always a good thing. There are better ways to improve metabolism, and I wouldn't recommend using apple cider vinegar as a way to lower blood sugar. Now, if you want to include vinegar in your meals just as a part of your diet because it's nutritious and you like the taste of it and you like that it might have some of these benefits, that is great. I'd strongly recommend that, but I don't recommend trying to use it to like manipulate your blood sugar levels. There are better ways to improve your metabolism. And the last thing is, should you grind chia seeds? The answer is yes. If you're trying to absorb all the omega-3 fats from the chia seeds, grind them. All right, so that's all I have for this episode of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy the show and you haven't left a review already, I would really appreciate it if you would go leave a review. That's what helps push the show up in the rankings and reach more people. And I really enjoy reading the reviews and seeing how you guys are enjoying the show. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll talk soon.